The world of Hunter x Hunter operates on a foundation of various intricate systems. The binding contracts of Nen, the rigid structures of the Hunter Association, and the inescapable currents of fate and causality that guide its characters toward often tragic ends. Within this meticulously constructed and densely interwoven narrative, Hisoka Moro exists as a glorious anomaly, a self-authored character in a story where the majority live out their predetermined roles. He's not just a powerful antagonist, a slave to his impulses, or a playful jester. He exists in one of the most crucial positions in the entire story as one of Hunter x Hunter's purest embodiments of its core philosophical tenets, the supreme value of the journey over the destination and of agency over fate. To understand Hisoka is to understand Togashi's commentary on narrative freedom, not just from the author's perspective, but from within the narrative itself and the identity it has formed independent of even its creator. Because I believe the character of Hisoka Moro exists beyond even the author's control. This video has a ton of objectives. I will try to argue that Hisoka functions as the ultimate definition of what a hunter represents, the living manifestation of the series' detour theme, and most challenging, I will explain why I view him as a meta-narrative entity with authorial power and an unusual degree of agency. This video is also a collaborative effort with my good friend NF, who has helped me in the past with some of my Hunter x Hunter videos, and he has Twitter threads on some of the topics covered today, which are linked in the description if you want to read some more analysis on the ideas we'll be exploring. Together we will deconstruct Hisoka's amorality as a form of perfect freedom, examine his techniques as literal tools of narrative manipulation, and trace his relationship with fate not as submission but as this abnormal partnership. This is my final video of 2025, and what better way to end the year than a video on the character I've spent most of it thinking about. I promised this way back in April when I released my video on Hisoka vs Chrollo, and since then I've been caught up with life and not uploading as much as I'd like to. Hopefully that will change in 2026, but I'm at least glad I could deliver on this promise before the year ends. With that said, let's dive right into the villain even the author cannot control. Hisoka uses the symbolic language of the narrative, playing cards, clothing, even the fabric of reality itself, not as a subject bound by it, but in the same way a director uses a script. He is essentially staging his own thrilling drama. His ultimate limitation, death as the ultimate fate, and his eventual transcendence from beyond the grave, characterize this man as the living embodiment of a will that seeks only to play the game forever. Even if he has to play alone, which isn't what he wants, he will never stop playing. First and foremost, Hisoka's most defining characteristic is his amorality. He isn't evil in an ideological sense, he is post-ethical and post-conventional. His actions are governed by a single seamless constant, the pursuit of personal gratification through combat. This amorality is the bedrock of his unprecedented freedom and the source of his authorial power. In this sense, he functions not as a morally culpable agent, but more as a force of nature, which is very befitting, as we will get to see. None of this is to say Hisoka isn't evil, he undeniably is, but this evil isn't a matter of theory or policy. He doesn't operate like everybody else in the rigid frameworks of right and wrong. While characters like Kurapika are shackled to vengeance and gone to the quest of finding his father, Hisoka is utterly untethered. He expresses no interest in his own origin. He lives in an eternal, predatory present, free to redefine his goals and relationships at a moment's notice. This makes him the ultimate opportunist and arguably the most adaptable entity in the narrative, a character without an integrated backstory, something he personally chooses not to divulge by the way, making him somebody whose only history is the list of his past fights. This goes so far that even the very little backstory we have of him was outsourced to Shueisha, the mangaka of Tokyo Ghoul, and while Togashi did give him the heads up to canonize this one-shot, it's still emblematic of Hisoka's nature that even the background information is provided outside the narrative. Hisoka respects no system except the ones he creates for his own amusement. He has been disqualified in the Hunter exam, he ignores the Phantom Troop's collective goals, and he manipulates allies and enemies with equal indifference. He treats the world's rules, whether legal, social, or even the conventional rules of a fair fight, as mere suggestions to generally ignore. There are exceptions to this, of course, moments in which he actively chooses to indulge in structures besides his own, but he is never bound to them. After his defeat by Chrollo, Hisoka explains explicitly abandons any pretense of foreplay or entertainment, more or less vowing to kill the troop members in their sleep if that's what it takes. He literally began this crusade by killing Cortopi on the toilet. And I don't view this as hypocrisy, but rather as the final casting off of a narrative constraint. He declares himself free from the very idea of an honorable duel between rivals. His decisions have always been a cold, whimsical calculus of potential pleasure, but Chrollo forced him to bend the knee, so to speak, and he has decided to never do so again. Hisoka helps the protagonist when it amuses him or serves to cultivate a future toy, as he labels Gon and Killua. He kills indifferently when bored or obstructed, as with the Hunter Examiner or random contestants. He does whatever the hell he wants to do, whatever he thinks will satisfy him. This calculus is his only moral compass, and it makes him completely unpredictable to other characters and often the reader because it is entirely internally derived. He is, in essence, a narrative system unto himself, a character operating on a logic of desire that exists orthogonal to the story's prevailing moral and emotional systems, and Togashi very explicitly treats him as such. He can be a protagonist, an antagonist, a hero and a villain, all at once and none at all. He can't be placed into a box, you can't slap him with a label. He's just a guy who doesn't mesh well with all the other guys. He's his own guy. This absolute freedom positions Hisoka as one of only two major characters who are truly self-authored, in my opinion. Where others are shaped by trauma, mission, or duty, Hisoka's identity is a conscious, ongoing performance. He chooses his clothes, face paints, allegiances, and his prey. He's making conscious design choices. In a cast filled to the brim with deeply psychological characters, Hisoka lacks a deep psychology we can infer. And this doesn't make him shallow by comparison, in fact it's quite the opposite. He is entrenched in depth, but in a way that feels profoundly alien and autonomous, a blank page that constantly writes and rewrites itself. This orientation places Hisoka in a unique relationship with time. Most characters in Hunter x Hunter are future-oriented. Their present actions are justified by anticipated outcomes. Kurapika endures suffering for the promise of revenge. Gon tolerates pain for the hope of reunion. Killua pushes forward to escape his past. Their lives are vectors pointed towards something. Hisoka, by contrast, exists in an eternal present, not because he lacks foresight, but because foresight doesn't color his values. The future matters only as long as it promises more intense experiences. He doesn't move toward a destination, he spirals. This spiral structure is one of the main reasons I consider Hisoka the ultimate embodiment of the series' detour theme. Jing famously tells Gon that the real treasure lies in the detours, not the destination. For most characters, this is wisdom learned painfully and retroactively, but for Hisoka, it has always been self-evident. He never needed to be told. His entire existence is a detour away from socially legible life paths. He doesn't seek status, legacy, belonging, etc. He doesn't build anything. He doesn't preserve anything. He interrupts, he complicates, he reroutes. Hisoka is what happens when the detour becomes the point itself, when the detour is the destination. This aspect of Hisoka is visually and mechanistically encoded in the symbolic system that surrounds him, namely the playing cards. Hisoka's playing cards are much more than mere aesthetic flair, and I suspect that alongside the rest of his very particular design choices, they function as the visual language of his authorial power. A deck of cards is a closed system with defined rules but infinite possible outcomes. The player's skill, whim, and luck determine the result. Hisoka treats the narrative of Hunter x Hunter as precisely such a game, and he is both dealer and wildcard. The suits in his speech bubbles are his directorial notes. This system can be viewed as Hisoka's real-time commentary on his own behaviors, almost like an invitation to understand him, to crack the code of this enigma. The hearts and diamonds represent the playful side of Hisoka. These red suits worn together signal a playful, curious, and process-oriented mode. He wears this combination in Heaven's Arena, where he's not pursuing a single objective, but enjoying the process of fighting, instructing Gon, and simply savoring the atmosphere. The clubs and spades represent the task-oriented side of Hisoka. These black suits denote a serious, deceptive, and objective-oriented mode. He wears these during the Hunter exam, where his goal was to qualify. He also wears it in his fateful battle with Chrollo, where his goal is to kill. Clubs and spades reflect a Hisoka who has adopted a role within a larger plot to achieve a specific objective. This aesthetic code that Hisoka consciously adorns himself with makes it so that he is always in character, and the character he chooses to play dictates the narrative tone of the scenes he inhabits. It is a metatextual signal, a sort of wink to the audience that Hisoka is aware of his own narrative function and is actively choosing it every step of the way. And it incorporates the widely used symbolism of playing cards. The two colors of red and black correspond to day and night. The four suits, 2 red, 2 black, represent spring and summer and autumn and winter respectively. The 13 cards in each suit corresponds to the 13 lunar cycles that make up a year, and the sum of all the value numbers in a complete deck of cards adds up to 365, or a year. This has led to varying different interpretations on the symbolism of each individual card, and I'll be applying some of those to Hisoka, albeit very loosely, as I don't think this can be assigned with 100% reliability. Hisoka's manipulation of symbolism goes beyond the cards in his hands or the symbols in his speech bubbles. It's even his clothes, it's even his own skin. The hearts and diamonds combination and clubs and spades combination are his two primary shirt designs. Those are the two main characters he plays, but he isn't limited to just those, as his most recent appearance has established. And so, no wonder he behaved so uncharacteristically there. Chapter 405 gave us the first piece of introspection and contemplative inner monologue in the entire story, and the fact he's dressed so differently signals this to the audience even further. When you actually break down and decode the timing of these different outfits, you come to witness a character actively directing his own role within the plot. I understand this can sound quite insane, but bear with me and hopefully I can convince you of this interpretation by the end. It's also worth noting that Hisoka is technically wearing all 4 suits with his outfits, with 2 displayed on the front and 2 on the back, but I'll be referring to the outfits by the 2 suits worn on the front, as those are the only ones we even get to see most of the time. The hearts and diamonds pair we can call the uniform of the playful trickster. As established, these red suits symbolize the day and the warmer seasons, and that has associated the red suits with qualities like curiosity and playfulness. When Hisoka wears this combination, he is in a state of open exploration and indulgence. The example here would be Heaven's Arena, where Hisoka has no overarching external objective. He's not hunting a specific person to the exclusion of all else. Instead, he is savoring the environment, testing new fighters, re-engaging with an old rival, and meticulously cultivating Gon's potential through a stipulated duel. His goal is not to achieve or end something, but to nurture and enjoy a process. This outfit reflects his internal state. He is being curious about growth and working toward the goal of a satisfying future fight, all without the grim finality that comes with the other character he plays. In this mode, Hisoka exists as an agent of chaotic potential, scattering seeds of conflict and growth for his future harvest without doing too much. The clubs and spades pair we can call the uniform of the task-oriented killer, or something like that. The black suits symbolize the night and the darker seasons, which has made them symbols of chaos, investigation, and being task-oriented. In this outfit, it's like Hisoka is wearing a uniform for a job, even if that job is one of his own devising. And this is also the outfit we see most prominently. He wears it in the Hunter exams, the 13th chairman election, and the battle with Crollo. During the exams, Hisoka's there to get his license after having failed it the year prior for indulging in his whims and savoring the environment a bit too much. I'd imagine he wore the hearts and diamonds outfit in the year he was disqualified for killing the examiner, assuming this interpretation of his aesthetic code holds up. During the election, Hisoka has a clear external objective, simply assist Illumi in his endeavors. And of course, the battle with Crollo doesn't need much explaining. He was a man with a mission he had waited patiently to carry out. The most compelling evidence that these different outfits are a deliberate aspect of Hisoka's design with clear individual functions comes in Yorknew, where he dons both outfits at different stages. Earlier in the arc, when he meets Kurapika or when the troop caught Killua and Gon tailing them, Hisoka is seen in the playful hearts and diamonds outfit, lounging and observing, even stepping in to threaten Killua. But then when the arc really kicks off in the chapter leading to the fortune telling itself, he has switched to the serious clubs and spades. This switch does not feel coincidental. Hisoka's not just changing clothes, it's more like he's costuming himself for the performance. The act of forging the prophecy is a serious, deceptive, goal-oriented task. It's like putting a shiesty on. He's getting in character for what he's going to do, psychologically preparing for and signaling his shift from a playful observer to the author of fate. This conscious costuming culminates in his blank shirt phase during Greed Island. As noted in the thread linked below, this is a period of narrative transience. His planned fight with Crollo has collapsed, and he is in a state of waiting, following the seeds he planted, Gon and Killua, to see what fruit they bear. The blank shirt symbolizes as a null mode, an author between projects. He has no immediate role to play, no specific performance to give, and thus wears the uniform of ambivalence. It visually reinforces that Hisoka's identity is not fixed, but instead a series of chosen performances, and when the performance is unclear, even his iconic symbolism takes a back seat. This symbolic dresswear enforces the idea that Hisoka is not just a user of symbols, but a self-aware stylist of his own narrative iconography, using his appearance, his very character design, as the first and most consistent tool of his authorial power. The numerology of the cards he uses further reveals his manipulation of story beats. As I briefly explained earlier, a deck of playing cards contains 52 cards, each one representing a week of the year, with each suit representing a season, with the 13 cards within each suit representing the 13 lunar months, and the sum of all the value numbers in the deck of cards adding up to 365 or a year. Thus, simply by playing with the cards and manipulating them at his will, Hisoka is symbolically toying with fate itself, as fate and time are forces that often exist simultaneously. His strong association with the number 4 also further supports this, as 4 is synonymous with death in Japan, and death is the ultimate fate awaiting us all. Having power over death means having power over fate, and to top it all off, he even has Grim Reaper imagery. This next session goes even deeper into the rabbit hole, but taking the card symbolism further, it's also interesting to consider that each specific number on a given card carries an inherent meaning as well. The ace signifies desire, 2 symbolizes union and togetherness, 3 represents faith, 4 stands for satisfaction, 5 represents change, 6 adjustments, 7 symbolizes victory, 8 the symbol of power, 9 signifies new beginnings, and 10 symbolizes success or completion. This 1 to 10 card symbolism is a modern numerological framework inspired primarily by Pythagorean number progression, later simplified and adapted within popular Western esoteric traditions. It is not a universal or historical standard, but a contemporary interpretive model that is widely applied to playing cards, and with the wealth of general knowledge Togashi implements all throughout the series, I'm sure he's done his research when it comes to the cards that accompany Hisoka's every appearance. Paying close attention to each time Hisoka displays a card, reading it in conjunction with his outfit as well as the suit of the card presented, proves to be a consistently rewarding experience. The intentionality behind each and every one of his actions cannot be understated, and it further goes to show just how much communication Hisoka is engaging in throughout each and every one of his appearances. It serves as a reminder of just how intentional a figure he is, as well as to give himself a disadvantage by giving others a way to decode his intentions, something he is doing by his own choice. When he kills this contestant of the Hunter exam, he uses the numbers 4, 8, and 10, so satisfaction, power, and success using the 1 to 10 model outlined earlier. That's how Hisoka feels every time he kills somebody. When threatening Killua to maintain his cover, he uses the 2 of spades, 2 symbolizing union and the spades symbolizing his task-oriented side, so it serves to complement his forced and deceptive alliance with the Phantom Troop. He's trying to appear loyal. Assuming this framework really does exist and there is a code to these playing cards, then that would make each card play a micro-narrative, a declaration of intent written in a symbolic language only Hisoka really speaks. If Hisoka has anything worth calling a philosophy, it would be gambling. His entire existence is a high-stakes game where the currency is not money but narrative potential, the thrill of climax, lives at stake. He is driven by a desire to see lives end, to see stories completed. For Hisoka, the entire world is a casino and every strong person is a chip with fluctuating value. His most fundamental gamble is the investment in potential. This is a wager against time and linear growth. When Hisoka spares Gon during the Hunter exam, or when he facilitates Gon and Killua's training, he's almost purchasing a contract for the future. He's betting that the immense potential he senses in them will appreciate into a more valuable, more satisfying confrontation later. He pays the initial cost of forgoing immediate gratification for the chance at a massive future payoff, which would be a life or death battle with a matured opponent at the peak of their potential. These are cold, economic calculations Hisoka is making, simply disguised as whimsicality. The same applies to his years-long pursuit of Chrollo or his prenup with Illumi. He infiltrates the Phantom Troop, bides his time, and waits for the perfect conditions, gambling that his patience and scheming will culminate in the ultimate fight. This guy is the furthest thing from a simple battle junkie. He is a tycoon in the market of combat. In gambling terms, his relationship with fate is like that of a card counter in a rigged game. He knows the system is working against everybody, so he studies its patterns and plays directly into it. Neon Nostrade's prophecies represent the house rules, a seemingly immutable future. Hisoka uses texture surprise to forge his own future, which would be the equivalent of marking the deck, not trying to win within the predetermined rules. He alters the very information that defines the game for everyone else. By changing his prophecy, he changes the behavioral output of the Phantom Troop, thereby reshaping the probable future. He's gambling that his forged card, the prophecy, will trick the other players into actions that create a more favorable outcome for him. It's a meta gamble, a bet placed not on events but on the manipulation of the source code of causality itself. The fact that his manipulation indirectly brings about the true fates of Shalnok and Kortopi is the ultimate irony, because the house eventually still wins. That fate still comes about, but Hisoka's cheating dramatically altered the path and the payouts along the way. And of course, the very fact that he is the one that delivers the fate assigned by the house, killing those two by his own hands, only reinforces his elevated position within the system. If he goes on to kill Shizuku next, as I suspect he will, this will only strengthen everything I just outlined. The culmination of Hisoka's gambling philosophy is his post-mortem resurrection, the ultimate gamble on uncertainty. In his fight with Chrollo, Hisoka loses by the established rules of the game, combat to the death. His chips are swept off the table. But a true gambler, especially one who believes he authors the game, does not accept the finality of the deal. Using bungee gum and texture surprise to restart his own heart is a complete rejection of the settled outcome. It's like a gambler slamming the table and refusing to concede, going for one more game with a new approach. He resuscitates himself and re-enters the game with a new and far more ruthless strategy. To Hisoka, the play is everything, and the refusal to leave the table is the highest principle. Even death is just a losing hand to be overturned, not the end of the game. Hisoka's greatest gamble is on the infinite extensibility of his own narrative, a bet that his desire can always trump the finality of any authored ending. Nen in Hunter x Hunter is the ultimate system, power formalized through self-imposed limitations. It's like the law of the universe everybody must engage with, a framework of probabilities and constraints that every character has their own relationship with, fate made tangible. Bungee gum's famous explanation, possessing both the properties of rubber and gum, is a great meme in the community, but I also think there's some overlooked value there. It's almost a form of misdirection. It conceals versatility behind simplicity. Bungee gum is elastic, adhesive, reversible. It is capable of almost anything with the right amount of creativity. The description of just rubber and gum doesn't really invite you to imagine the infinite possibilities of the technique. And this deception isn't an isolated trick. This is a consistent and intentional pattern of the magician. Despite what you'd expect from a battle junkie, Hisoka doesn't operate through brute force. He isn't just fighting his opponents, but controlling what they see, expect, and believe. He manipulates flaws, disguises corpses, hides damage, etc. His power lies not in simple strength, but in authorship, in deciding which version of reality others are allowed to perceive and therefore react to. Texture Surprise takes this even further by making real, tangible changes to be perceived. It's not camouflage, it's basically editing. It functions like editorial authority exercised from within the narrative. This ability is perhaps the most compelling argument for the meta reading of Hisoka's character. Texture Surprise is explained as the ability to reproduce texture, from human and animal skin to plants to metals to fabrics to dyes and pencil markings. And in this particular use case, when we receive the exposition for the ability, he reproduces the texture of the paper and the ink of the prophecy given to him. Paper is the fundamental medium of authors and comic artists. Hisoka, by manipulating this medium from within the medium, asserts a layer of control that mirrors Togashi's own. And given how Texture Surprise affects what we perceive on the page, Hisoka is essentially re-authoring perceived reality, not just for the characters but for the readers as well. Whether it's hiding Machi stitches or forging a fake fate, he edits the page that we are reading. He edits what other characters are seeing. This is what makes Hisoka so unbelievably terrifying, and this is why I call him a villain beyond the author's control. He is a forger of narrative reality. The Hunter Association's defining ethos is outlined in the narration of Chapter 1, Page 1. Hunters are those captivated by the spell of the mysterious unknown. They are not defined by a specific job, but by an irrepressible urge to pursue, to discover, to go where they do not belong. By this fundamental criteria, Hisoka is arguably the most perfect hunter in the series besides Jing himself. Where Hisoka's traits become particularly explicit is when contrasted with Gon, a character very much like him, a kindred spirit in many ways. Yet despite similarities they share, their fundamental dispositions as well as their respective motivations could not further diverge. While Gon has externalized the hunt, Hisoka has internalized it entirely. Let's quickly compare Gon and Hisoka in this regard. Gon's stated goal is to find Jing, which is inherently external. He's looking for a person, he's journeying towards a destination. Hisoka's stated goal is to find strong opponents, which is more of an internal condition. It's a process and it's not a tangible thing despite being dependent on other people, because what Hisoka considers strength is malleable and the potential of others is hugely considered. Gon's relationship to his goal is linear, though distracted by meaningful detours. The goal gives the journey meaning in Gon's case. Hisoka's relationship to his goal is circular, or a spiral as I previously described it. The goal itself is the journey, the hunt is perpetual, each climax seeds the next. Gon's defining drive comes from curiosity, familial longing, innate talent, and a search for identity and connection. Hisoka is driven by aesthetic and sensual pleasure, the thrill of the climax, a search for sublime stimulation. And when it comes to how the idea of the unknown manifests in these two hunters, Gon seeks this externally, in Jing, in the world, in the mystery of others, whereas Hisoka carries the unknown within himself internally. He is the mysterious, unpredictable variable inserted into others' stories. Gon's journey is a classic heroic quest with a clear endpoint. Kurapika's is a classic revenge narrative from the get-go, again with a fixed endpoint. Hisoka's journey is pure and aimless. Gon is looking for someone, Kurapika is looking for something. Hisoka is open to anything, as long as it promises the thrill of combat. In this sense, he is more fundamentally aligned with the spirit of the opening monologue than the main character himself. Hisoka doesn't need something to hunt. The world itself is his hunting ground, and every strong person is a potential treasure. He is hunting for the sake of the hunt. The idea of the detour is the thesis of this story. Jing tells Gon the treasure is not at the end but in the uninteresting things along the way. Jing being the only person arguably more free than Hisoka as well. Hisoka lives this philosophy completely and absolutely, arguably to an even greater extent than Jing, who can sometimes be tied down by the relationships formed with the people he met on his detours. Hisoka has no final destination. His entire existence is a detour from any conventional life path, a series of escalating fights with no purpose other than the fight itself. He joins the Phantom Troop not for the family, but as a detour to reach Chrollo. He enters Greed Island not for the game, but as a detour to help Chrollo regain his nen and nourish those he expects to grow. Even his reaction to an otherwise climactic and built-up event, his fight with Chrollo at the end of Yorknu, caused zero distress in him after being postponed. He simply accepted what happened, realized that fighting Chrollo without Nen would not satisfy him at all, and just went on about his way. He is, in essence, the narrative embodiment of process over results, aka the journey over the destination, aka the detours. His confrontation with Chrollo, which he spent years orchestrating, ends not with his victory but with his death. That then spawns an entirely new narrative on the Black Whale. Even total defeat is just an exciting little plot twist in Hisoka's ongoing story. Another interesting way in which he inverts Gon's arc comes with how they both move forward from near-death experiences, or actual death in the case of Hisoka. After making a Nen vow to use up all of his potential and kill Pitou, Gon is also revived, but by an external force, again enforcing this dichotomy of externality and internality. Gon, who seeks to hunt somebody specific to validate himself, gets healed by someone else, and Hisoka, who derives his hunt solely from internal whims, makes his own heart beat using post-mortem Nen. Hisoka is what a hunter becomes when stripped of all external motivation. No revenge, no love, no duty, no discovery. He is the hunt in its most distilled, amoral, and potent form. His relationships are not bonds of friendship or hatred, they are investments or entertainment. He is free from everything except the nature of his own desire, which dictates all his interactions. For Gon and Killua, he functions as a sort of cultivator. He's their first real, visceral exposure to Nen's potential, and this moment exists as a baptism of sorts that creates the right kind of expectations for what is to come in this world. Given that this is a story from the perspective of Gon, and us readers follow the main character as he crosses into the world of the supernatural, which is marked by the acquisition of Nen, which completes the secret hunter exam, Hisoka is essentially the true examiner of the hunter exams for Gon and Killua. The way he played Examiner briefly in the first few chapters was a seed for his role in the Heavens Arena, his stipulated fight with Gon, which functions like a brutal graduation exam. Hisoka is the one to truly welcome Gon, and by extension us readers, into the world of hunters. This alone places him in a unique position within the narrative, but adding everything else discussed today, like the nature of texture surprise and the intentionality behind his design choices, is what makes the power of an author an undeniable facet of Hisoka's existence. The core dynamic of authored wills and where Hisoka's agency meets its match is against Chrollo, the collector who seeks to own and organize the stories of others, represented through their stolen abilities he stores in a book, is the perfect antithesis of Hisoka, the individualist who lives a thrilling, self-authored story, who has the ability to reproduce the paper and the ink of the pages in that very book. Chrollo is fatalistic and theatrical. He believes in and manipulates predetermined outcomes like the fortunes in Yorknu, and he stages battles as elaborate symbolic plays. Hisoka wants to break fate and genre for pure fun, just because he can, and he refuses to allow anything to control him, which makes Chrollo his mortal enemy. Their fight in Heaven's Arena is a clash of narrative philosophies. Chrollo as the meticulous director following a strict script versus Hisoka, the wild actor who just wants to have fun and get lost in the joy of battle. Chrollo's victory is achieved through a borrowed ensemble of abilities in a pre-rigged arena. This is the fatalist author writing an inescapable ending for the one who lives and dies by battle. But Hisoka wasn't much of a fan of Chrollo's storytelling. He disliked this ending almost as much as Ichiruki's in 2016, and so he brings himself back to life to reject that ending in his most profound act of rebellion. The troupe was obviously never a family to Hisoka. It was a convenient collaboration to be used and then discarded. From the beginning, this was made abundantly clear. The reveal he's a member of the troupe is immediately followed up with the reveal that he actually isn't. But even just thematically, he never had a place amongst them. His amorality is unique among the troupe because the troupe's violence is instrumental. It is a means to an end, while Hisoka's violence is autotelic, the end in of itself. This fundamentally removes him from the fold of the troupe by nature, particularly considering the now added context via the troupe's backstory. There is purpose behind their actions, at least there was at the beginning, and it's likely there still exists an ideological backdrop to their collective psychology. Hisoka has no such thing. He doesn't think about what's right or wrong, he simply follows his whims. His post-resurrection war on the troupe is not driven by revenge in the emotional sense, and I don't believe it's something he feels he needs to do because he feels disrespected. It is simply his next whim. He wants to fight Chrollo again, and this time he wants to do so on his own terms, to maximize the pleasure he will get from the battle, and he knows that killing off his family one by one will achieve exactly that. Hunter x Hunter symbolism goes very deep, and there are so many minute details that are often loaded with immense significance. Such is the case with the handedness of characters. I've mentioned this in a video before without truly going in depth, but the importance of which hand is being used in any given moment cannot be understated. First of all, it's necessary to outline the real-life connotations that left and right-handedness carry from ancient history up until today. Culturally, the right has always been favored, which explains why only 10 to 12% of the entire population is left-handed. Religiously as well, the right hand is almost always favored. For instance, the three Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, all assign positive connotation to the right hand, and more often than not demonize the left hand and assign it bad qualities and connotations. In Hinduism, Hinduism as well, there's a concept of Vamachara, in which the left-hand path is associated with practices that are extreme and non-conforming, versus Dakshinachara, or the right-hand path that is agreeable and orthodox. The political layer of left versus right should be familiar to most people watching, and then there's the paths that can be found in esotericism and the occult, a major source of inspiration for Hunter x Hunter. It's also here where we find one of Togashi's biggest anchors in regards to his application of this symbolism, which is the difference between serving God and self-deification, the right hand and left hand paths respectively. Note that the left hand path is often equated to a state of eternal presence, meaning to entirely indulge and live in the moment. This carnal angle is definitely applicable to Hisoka, whose whims are entirely defining of his each and every action. This handedness runs so deep that even our languages are contaminated with these connotations, as formulations like being right, righteousness, being left out are all inherently in tune with this cultural perception. Keeping in line with his consistent inversion of real-life motifs, such as the world map being an inverse of ours, the title of the series being mirrored in covers, or the name York New being a flipped version of New York, Togashi also flips the connotations of left and right, creating the symbolic picture we have at hand in Hunter x Hunter. This would make the left hand symbolic of good qualities and the right hand symbolic of bad qualities. Togashi is incredibly consistent with incorporating this left and right symbology. So let's flick through some quick examples. The most defining example is this panel: gallery fake, divine left hand, demonic right hand, literally inverting the cultural perception very blatantly. Killua rips out and crushes Jonas's heart with his right hand. In doing so, he is abiding by the values instilled in him by his family, literally using a technique he was taught by them, which renders him shackled. On the flip side, Illumi stretches out his left arm when making Killua bend to his will, because abiding by the family's values is something Illumi genuinely believes in, unlike Killua, who feels limited and caged by the Zoldyx. The left and right symbolism isn't only concerned with what is morally correct, but rather what is true to the character in question, their freedom. In his battle against Castro, Hisoka, who is in control of his fate, allows his right arm to be severed, and even goes on to hold it in his left hand in this page where he's talking about seeing the future. Interestingly enough, this battle contains some very curious connections to the future, to Hisoka's next real fight against a rival in the same arena. I'm skipping over Gon because that was not serious from Hisoka's perspective, which means I'm of course talking about the battle against Crollo. The way Hisoka defeated Castro ended up becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy, which is so fascinating when paired with him telling Castro that he can see the future. The cause of Castro's defeat was the squandering of his memory capacity. Essentially, he overloaded Castro's brain with so much information he couldn't keep track of, which is exactly the way Crollo managed to defeat Hisoka. We also have Hisoka making a bold prediction about Castro's defeat, in a very similar vein to Crollo's bold prediction of his own victory. Crollo completely hijacked Hisoka's role as the author, as the one with the power to dictate the flow of the narrative itself, and that's what makes Hisoka's defeat so unbelievably monumental. Crollo straight up jacked his flow, word for word, bar for bar. He overloads Hisoka's brain and makes him dance to death. In their final clash, Crollo blows off Hisoka's left arm. Remember, within the symbolic framework, the left represents agency, self-awareness, and control. This is Crollo's ultimate victory. He severs Hisoka's authorship and maims the hand that writes its own destiny. But this only lasts a couple of chapters because Hisoka's response is to break the script in the most fundamental way. By using bungee gum to restart his own heart and lungs, Hisoka literally rejects the climax written for him. In the immediate aftermath, as he uses his nen to reconstruct his body, he prioritizes the regeneration of his left hand. And in accordance to the symbolism, this functions as a reassertion of his agency and authorial power. Crollo only managed to temporarily damage his status, and Hisoka immediately reclaimed it. This death was not an end, but Hisoka's most consequential detour of the entire series, rebirthing the entire narrative of this dynamic that spans across almost the entire series. I just said entire like 3 times in one sentence. Hisoka proves that even a beautifully planned death, the ultimate fate, is just another condition to be manipulated and overcome by somebody of his stature. The final thing I want to cover today that colors my interpretation of Hisoka comes not from within the narrative's internal logic, but from an interesting piece of trivia. The revelation of Hisoka's surname, Moro, which we finally received a full 18 years after his debut, is a clear homage to the French painter Gustave Moreau, and specifically to his obsessive, career-defining fixation on the biblical figure of Salome. Salome dancing before Herod and The Apparition are Gustave Moreau's two most famous pieces, with the latter serving as a very obvious inspiration for the cover of volume 34, the same volume in which we received Hisoka's surname. These two artworks have been studied, analyzed, and critiqued since they were first presented like 150 years ago, with the general consensus of Moreau's presentation for this biblical figure being something sensual, cold, and hypnotic, which sounds very familiar. Moreau dramatically transformed the biblical figure of Salome, who is timid and exists in the shadow of her mother, into somebody much more powerful and malicious. In The Apparition especially, Salome's lack of visible horror or remorse for the severed head she has summoned paints a very dark picture of the figure, who Togashi has incorporated into his own story as a parallel to Hisoka. To clarify that this is not uncharacteristic of Togashi, one need look no further than another volume cover referencing a classical painting, and how much value can be drawn from that reference as well. Volume 28 is a recreation of one of the most famous pieces of Christian artwork, the Coronation of the Virgin, with Peter, the character deeply associated with motherly themes, taking the place of the Virgin Mary. Salome's dance is a ritual that culminates in the head of John the Baptist. It aestheticizes violence and killing. The same goes for Hisoka's engagements. They are rituals that must culminate in the climax of victory or the sweet despair of a strong opponent's defeat, and he refers to these battles as dances. The head of John the Baptist for Hisoka is the moment of complete struggle, the peak of an opponent's power and will right before it is extinguished. He doesn't collect physical trophies to put up on display, he collects moments of catharsis. This is why he cultivates Gon and Killer, where he is nurturing future heads to sever, investing in the potential for a more exquisite future climax. He is trying to experience the best stories, the best endings. His obsession with Krollo is the pinnacle of this. Krollo represents the most satisfying head imaginable to Hisoka, the ultimate prize and experience. The fight itself is Hisoka's dance, and Krollo's defeat, or his own thrilling death, is the desired head that Hisoka never managed to collect. The fact we literally get some narration about how heavy the head of an adult male is in a chapter titled Head, and Hisoka weaponizes them consistently throughout the fight, hammers this point even further. These are all very deliberate details, and they function almost as a mockery of what Hisoka couldn't have. He has all these cheap heads of the audience members, but not John the Baptist, not the real head he wants more than anything. His resurrection and subsequent war on the troop reframes this. Having been denied his climax by Krollo's theatrical scripting, Hisoka now seeks to take the legs off the spider body to force the head to engage him directly once more. By linking Hisoka to Moreau, Togashi accomplishes two very important things. Firstly, he anchors Hisoka in a specific artistic tradition, the symbolist movement, which sought to express ideas and emotions through metaphor and emblematic figures rather than literal representation. As this video has gone to great lengths to explore, Hisoka is a walking symbolist painting. His cards, his suits, his face paint, his very nen abilities are all symbols in a personal iconography. Second, and perhaps most importantly, Togashi signals that Hisoka is a meta-narrative figure. Moreau used Salome to explore his own preoccupations with fate, desire, and the sacred feminine. Togashi uses Hisoka Moro to explore the nature of the hunt, the value of the detour, and the terrifying figure of a character who, through the purity of his desire, gains a semblance of authorial control. Hisoka is Togashi's Salome, so to speak, a means to inject the idea of pure, aesthetic, and amoral craving into his story. In the afterword to the Krollo fight, Togashi outlines his thought process when approaching the fight and the various steps he had to take. Among these steps, Togashi mentions vetoing Hisoka's desire to kill Machi, a remark that is far more revealing than it may seem. I originally believed this was a huge counterpoint to the idea that Hisoka cannot be controlled. As Togashi literally states, Hisoka wanted to kill Machi, and that's not what happened. But I did a lot of research for this video, and that includes understanding the concept of a veto. A veto in this context is not just an authorial decision. The term denotes a specific political mechanism, a constitutional right to reject a proposal made by a lawmaking body. The language implicitly frames Hisoka as an active agent whose decision required a formal rejection. In other words, Togashi isn't saying he chose not to have Hisoka kill Machi, he's saying he overruled him. This distinction is super important because if Togashi's exercising a veto, then Hisoka is positioned metatextually as the lawmaking body. Do you know how crazy that is? It's not that Hisoka literally exists outside his creator's control, but that Togashi experiences the character as operating according to a logic so forceful that it resists authorial interference outside of this one example where Togashi was like, no, I can't do that. Hisoka's actions emerge not according to the plot, but as consequences of a system Togashi himself constructed and then committed to honoring. This is how a fictional character can appear to act independently of their creator. Metatextual autonomy doesn't mean complete freedom from authorship. Obviously not. The character can't exist if the author doesn't put pen to page. It just means that within the symbolic and thematic rules of the narrative, the character's will becomes inevitable and coercive even to the author. Hisoka Moro functions as the Joker in Togashi's deck, a wild card that can change the game's rules. He is a self-writing entity in a world of pre-written destinies, a forger of reality's texture, and among the purest hunters because he hunts only for the sensation of the hunt itself. Through the symbolic systems of cards and clothing, he acts as his own director. Through his relationships, he acts as a catalyst, forcing others to grow in his shadow so that one day they can play a role in the script he envisions for them. Hisoka's freedom from morality, from history, from social convention is all ultimately in service to a single master: his own desire for a thrilling climax. The story must not end. The game must go on. The dance must continue. Where will his impulses take him next? Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. This was incredibly challenging to make, even with the help of NF, who has dissected this story with a fine-tooth comb for as long as I've known him. These ideas are very out there, but to me they all come together so profoundly and make Hisoka one of the most interesting and rewarding characters to think about in all of fiction. I hope at least some people will appreciate this deep dive, speculative analysis, theory, whatever you want to call it, video essay. Happy holidays, and I'll see you guys in the new year.